The reason I'm doing that, I'm going to be showing you a little bit of a score page, is because it actually does relate directly to Bill. This is something that Bill West asked me to do every year for his humanities classes over at Syracuse University. He wanted me to come in and actually show his students what a conductor does. And I knew that they knew, as much as most people know, that a conductor stands there waving his or her arms around. And the language is not necessarily understood by everybody in the audience, nor in the orchestra at times, depending on the conductor and the piece and the musicians. So I always point out that actually there's a lot of study. You do actually have to know. It'd be like knowing how to read a chart or a map and learning, kind of decoding what the composer has to say. So while it seems like it'll be a little bit of a tangent that we go on today, hopefully it's something that might be illuminating to you anyway. And it is something directly related to what Bill was fascinated by, and he always liked to comment that he wished he knew more about the scores, because he, of course, got so much from the music by simply listening to it. He loved to listen to it, and he would bring out, he could hear so many details in the music just by hearing it through the speakers. But then when I would be there, we would team teach something, or I'd show something, so it's, yes, and that's why it's great as a conductor to be able to look down and see especially his favorite instruments like the trombone, as you all know. He loved that so much. So Lauren is back, and I'm going to let her give the opening remarks before we start.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Tracy's back there, our wonderful Tracy, working on the transparency. She knows how. I'm bringing this up for a reason. This is a tough, very special day for all of us. Good afternoon. It's really wonderful to see you all here. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for coming and welcome you to this special program, for which we have the honor of listening to the internationally renowned Daniel Hege, who will reflect with us on the joy and loving shared knowledge of music and the arts that Bill gave so freely to so many people. I'm going to cry. She's taking her clothes off. I'm going to make a few remarks and then introduce Daniel Hege. But first, can everybody hear? Is the sound okay? Okay. If you can't hear at any point during today, raise your hand. For any, it's too loud. Okay. How's this? Is this better? Okay. Just a few housekeeping notes. I'm going to make some remarks and then introduce Daniel Hege. To begin with, we've had so many requests to record this afternoon's event from people who could not be with us, but also from many people who are with us today, specifically because Bill's wide circle of friends and colleagues spans literally around the globe. So we are recording, not video recording, just audio recording, today's program, and at a later time, we'll let you all know how to access the recording. We're going to try to get it up onto our webpage, so anywhere in the world could just click on the link. But we'll let you know how that's going to work out. And next, on behalf of our members, secondly, she's here. Oh, she's here. Okay, perfect timing. Floripo?
Floritas. Floritas. F-L-O-R-I-P-E-Z.
P. Floritas.
Yes.
Floritas West. Come up here. I want to give you a hug.
Is your mic? She's on? What's that?
Everybody here loves you. You know that.
Oh, so no one can hear what she said.
I wanted.
Recording.
We're gonna have fun. You thought I was loud before? Okay. Okay. Well, I want to welcome Floripas West, who is this really what I'm supposed to do?
Yeah, one is for the speaker system here, and one is for the recording.
Okay.
So they're separate, you have to use both.
Now you know why we're not video recording. Floribus is with us today, and she provided the handouts for you. She wanted to honor Bill with his resume in a way. It's his, some of his experiences and his education, his work experience, and so she brought the document for us to copy and make available to all of you. So thank you. Thank you for so many reasons for being here. Let's give Floribus a minute. Next, on behalf of our members, this is going to be hard, I want to officially designate this chair, thank you, Wendy, as Bill's chair. And Wendy, can you?
In memory of William West, a remarkable teacher and a wonderful human being.
Thank you, Wendy. I have to tell, where's Chuck Rainiers? Chuck, there he is. You know all of those of class evaluations everybody fills out. We gratefully need those and appreciate the work that you do on those. But Chuck, so many times, and I read every single one, and so does Tracy, Chuck had suggested having some kind of an event. At least let's dedicate Bill's chair as Bill's chair. So it was Chuck's idea, and Sandy got the plaque made, and we put it on, and we're officially naming it today. And so please help yourself and come up and see the plaque at any time. That's Bill's chair. Other people can sit in it too. I know he'd want that. Now, how am I going to do this? Okay, I need another hand. I'd like to say a page turner, like I'm a pianist. I'd like to say a few words about Tracy, who put, oh, we're not doing the, never mind. I'd like to say a few words about what Bill West meant to OASIS. I know you're here to hear Daniel Hege and you want to share your own comments, but I just have to say a few things about what he meant to OASIS. To begin with, if you would do me this honor, please raise your hand if you were with us taking classes at OASIS in fall 2001. How many of you were with us way back then? Okay, we are family. We go a long way. Well, Bill was here too. And as we developed Upstate's OASIS program, it was critical for us to identify speakers. Okay, thank you, that's great. As we were developing Upstate's OASIS program, it was critical for us to identify speakers of the highest caliber to follow the national OASIS standards of excellence. Offering Dr. William West's 2 courses in that first fall catalog helped set the stage for us. 84 students enrolled. Bill's reputation resonated with OASIS and the community, placing us, so to speak, on the education map in central New York. Bill spent a lot of time at OASIS. Between 2001 and early 2012, right before he passed away, he taught 72 courses at OASIS, in which 3,261 individuals enrolled. Bill gave members the magic of his spirit and shared his vast knowledge about all things music, passion, and art. And one more tidbit I want to share with you. When the 2005 OASIS Shopping Town lease was in jeopardy, Bill came into the center serendipitously, and he met informally with Upstate's new, at the time, interim CEO. I'd love to tell you the whole story, but I won't. When Bill showed up at OASIS that day, at that time, he illustrated the sparks our high-level instructors bring to OASIS members. He helped tell the story of OASIS to the CEO, interim CEO,
totally new to OASIS, which in turn truly helped enable us to keep OASIS intact. The lease was signed and continued. Bill was a bright, shining light. His leaving us left a hole in all of us. Tracy had a difficult time putting the fall 2012 catalog together. I remember her saying, "How can we have a fall catalog without Bill?" I also remember Bill telling me many, many times how very much he loved working with Tracy. It's hard for us all to live in this world without Bill. But at this point, I know you want to hear from Daniel Hege, so I'm going to introduce him. Daniel is widely recognized as one of America's finest conductors, earning critical acclaim for his fresh interpretations of the standard repertoire and for his commitment to creative programming. He served for 11 seasons as the music director of the Syracuse Symphony, and in June 2009 was appointed music director of the Wichita Symphony, beginning his tenure with that orchestra in September 2010. Following a nationwide search, Mr. Hege was named music director in the Syracuse Symphony Orchestra, director of the orchestra, in April 1999. A few years later, he completed a 5-year tenure with the Baltimore Symphony, where he held the titles of assistant, associate, and resident conductor, and led the orchestra in subscription, family, and run-out concerts. Mr. Hege also served as associate conductor of the Kansas City Symphony and then the Pacific Symphony, was music director of the Encore Chamber Orchestra in Chicago, and music director of the Chicago Youth Symphony. Where'd you get all the time to do this? Where he was twice honored by the American Symphony Orchestra League for innovative programming. Daniel Hege has guest conducted in more than 20 cities nationwide and in Canada. He led the orchestras at the Grand Teton and Aspen Music Festivals. International engagements include performance with the Singapore Symphony and with the St. Petersburg Symphony at the Winter Nights Festival. Oh, was Bill there? He would have wanted to be. In addition, Mr. Hege has worked with the Syracuse Opera. Recent and upcoming guest conducting engagements include appearances in Houston, Louisiana, Naples, Orlando, Louisville, Florida, Puerto Rico, Omaha, Grand Rapids, Virginia, Sarasota, Charleston, Tulsa, Boise, and Memphis. And he's here today. Mr. Hege has made numerous recordings and CDs with many national symphonies. He's also made one in Chicago titled Violin Concertos by Black Composers of the 18th and 19th Centuries with Rachel Barton Pine and Encore Chamber Orchestra. Daniel received his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1987 from Bethel College. Anybody go there? In Kansas, where he majored in music and history. He continued his studies at the University of Utah, receiving a Master of Music degree in orchestra conducting, and also founding the University Chamber Orchestra and serving as assistant conductor of the University Orchestra and music director of the Utah Singers. He subsequently studied with Paul Vermel at the Aspen Music Festival and in Los Angeles with noted conductor and pedagogue Daniel Lewis. In May of 2004, he was awarded an honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters from Lemoyne College in Syracuse for his contributions to the cultural life in central New York State. Born in Colorado, Mr. Hege resides in Syracuse, yay, with his wife and their 3 daughters. How fortunate we are to have him today. At this time, I want to gratefully acknowledge Daniel Hege's kindness and generosity, presenting this poignant afternoon in Bill's memory as a gift to all who loved and dearly miss our Bill West. Join me in welcoming him.
Thank you, Lauren. When I was asked to do this presentation, I thought it's really going to be difficult to encapsulate so much, really, because it seems like if we were to dedicate 10 sessions, we would just be scratching the surface in some ways, just because of the volume of information that Bill knew and the number of people he knew and the different levels he knew people on and all of those things. There's so many dimensions to Bill's character. So I want to start off by saying right away what this is and what it is not. It does not seek to be a comprehensive review of his life, but rather, if you can think of it, a vertical slice that I knew of Bill. Because everybody knew Bill in his or her own way, and I'm sure it was unique to everybody, even for the people who never spoke with Bill, only heard him lecture. He meant something very special to everybody. So with that, I was going over what I would say, and I thought it would be nice just to share a little bit of how I personally knew Bill. And maybe some of that would be in common with how you knew Bill, just to kind of get things started. And I thought when I composed the eulogy that I read at his memorial service, I thought it contained a lot of the things I would like to say. So I'd like to say some of those things now, and it contains some of the stories of our meetings at Rustin's and our ongoing conversations where we would just kind of pick up where we left off. Even if we hadn't seen each other for 3 or 4 weeks, we would just be right there in mid-story about, or talking about Schubert or Bruckner or somebody, just like that. So I'll start with this. I first knew Bill shortly after my family and I moved to Syracuse in the summer of 2000. Bill introduced himself to me after a concert, and he was so engaging from the first minute I met him that I wanted to talk with him again. We made a meeting time for Rustin's Diner on Jamesville Road, and with that meeting began a tradition for us, one that lasted nearly 12 years. We met about every 3 to 4 weeks, except when either of us was away during the summer break, and then we had a lot of catching up to do. What did we do over those breakfast meetings? Mostly, we just chatted like friends do. We talked about our families. For example, he would always ask me how Katerina and the children were doing and was very interested in their well-being. And I remember very well when he had just met Flor, and she is all he wanted to talk about for a long time. We also talked about the interesting things we were reading and listening to. We talked about where we had been traveling, and Bill always had comments and questions about where I had been, because as you well know, he had probably already been there. I couldn't believe I could mention some obscure thing, and he'd say, "Oh, that's right where the river goes by that bridge, and then that beautiful tree, and did you stop by the cemetery and see the gravesite of so-and-so?" And I'm like, I'm sure I didn't. It was just amazing, as you know, encyclopedic in that sense. We talked about our concerns we had about the world, about our changing culture, about teaching and learning, and yes, of course, we talked about music. In fact, we always got a chuckle about sitting in Rustin's, where on several occasions we got lost in another world, talking about Beethoven, Brahms, Sibelius, and Elgar, among others. And on more than one occasion, we were singing slow movements of Bruckner's symphonies, which started to get the raised eyebrow and odd look from nearby customers. Then we would tone it down, admitting we were getting a bit carried away. Invariably, we got on interesting tangents that would become an entire discovery from one of us about the other. What I learned early on about Bill is that he had an insatiable appetite for culture. He would have every night of the week planned to see performances at Syracuse Stage, Syracuse Symphony, Syracuse Opera, local theater, an SU or Lemoyne guest lecture, you name it, he would be there. And when he could take in multiple performances of the same program, he would do so. He was a loyal fan of so many arts institutions in Syracuse and central New York. He just wanted to absorb it all and know everything thoroughly. somewhere in all of that, he found time to read, study, and organize all his teaching. I want to mention Bill as a scholar from my perspective. Many of you know Bill as a teacher through OASIS and or through Syracuse University, Lemoyne College, Onondaga Community College, or some other way. If you have attended any of Bill's lectures, you will know that he was a most engaging speaker and a teacher who taught with obvious love of his subject matter and had an infectious enthusiasm. You may also know him as a writer. He was a contributing writer to the Post-Standard during the 80s and 90s and wrote for Table Hopping and a number of other publications. He was the program annotator for the Syracuse Symphony for decades, and I invited him to co-host the pre-concert lectures for the Syracuse Symphony, and we did them together for years. And just a side note on that, I remember asking Bill if he would help me with that, and he seemed so delighted to want to do that with me, and I was very happy because as a pre-concert talk goes, or lecture goes, for a half an hour or so, 30 minutes, which we would start a full hour before the performance started, it could get a little monotonous just to hear the sound of one person's voice for that whole time. So I wanted to make them more conversational, and I couldn't have picked a better person than Bill to do this with, because because of all the conversations we had had over the years, we would simply get together. He would stop by my dressing room for about 5 or 10 minutes before, and we would talk a little bit about what we were going to say. And somehow, about 30 seconds in, we'd get kind of bored talking about what we're going to talk about. We'll say, well, we'll do it out there. And it got to the point where we could kind of finish each other's sentences. We kind of would dovetail. He would love to talk about the juicy gossip and things like that of different composers. I mean, he was very knowledgeable about the music, and he could explain the music very well. But he allowed me to talk a little bit more about maybe the behind the scenes, putting the music together, working with a guest artist, or something like that. And then he would talk more about the biographical side of the composer, which, as a listener, when you have that complete knowledge, it makes it even more enjoyable, I think, to participate in the listening adventure. So we got into kind of a rhythm with that was very, very fun for me. The fact that Bill had such knowledge concerning the depth and breadth of a broad range of subjects is awe-inspiring. To be able to teach courses on the chamber music of Schubert, while also giving a survey of American musical theater, while planning courses on Shakespeare and the novels of Thomas Hardy, it's truly incredible. And those topics only scratch the surface. Why was Bill so good at teaching? Here are several reasons I can think of. Bill was a great scholar, but it isn't only because he knew a lot of information. Rather, in addition, he knew how to synthesize the information he knew in such a way that anyone would be able to understand. He was a great explainer of things. With Bill, there were no dumb questions. Rather, there were opportunities for him to try to elucidate the information in a different way, to back up, to connect the dots a little more vividly, using different examples and broader connections until he would be sure people understood. He loved the material he was teaching, and he loved communicating with others about it. And I think truly believed that everyone's lives could be improved by knowing more about the mysteries of great art, literature, history, philosophy, and the humanities in general, because it is through understanding these subjects that we learn about ourselves, and therefore we learn more about each other. Why else was he good at teaching? Because he was truly a curious person. He was curious about everything, about the big picture and all the details that made something what it was, whether it was a symphony or a poem or the major industry or political structure of a particular city or a nation halfway around the world. He wanted to know things, and he set out to try to understand. With regard to history and geography, you could ask him just about anything, and he would know about villages, city governments, mountain ranges, or great landmarks all over the world, and he would strive to know how everything fit together. He had such an animated charm, such a good wit, and such charisma that if he really loved something, then, well, you were going to love it too, regardless of what your actual taste in something might be. He had that way of convincing people, and I know that we are all the richer for it. I'm going to take this moment to just stop for a second in the middle of this eulogy. It's not really the middle if you're looking at your watches. It's about 2/3 through. But I want to stop and show you a little bit of the score now, because this is talking about Bill as a teacher and how, as another point of why he was a good teacher, he would invite other people in. I was not the only one. He would invite other people from different institutions in town, other professors from other disciplines to come in and speak about what they knew, and so that he could really give his students a very broad appreciation for many things. So, jumping right into it. I might need a little help in focusing this while I'm holding all this. All right, good. Good, okay. All right, so what you see here, and maybe many of you have seen this before, I know I've done other talks where I've shown the score, but this is like a little plan, if you will. It has all the information in it that is supposed to be going on in the orchestra, what Mahler intended. This is part of Gustav Mahler's Ninth Symphony here, and you can see on your left, you see these words and numbers, and it starts at the very top and goes all the way down to the bottom. And for those of you who read music or play piano, anything like that, you'll see that this entire vertical slice, as it were, is one measure. It's one bar. So you're used to, with piano or vocal, maybe seeing 2 staves, as we would call them, or 4 if you're reading a choral score, the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. And here you have, well, you could just count them and to see how many there are. But the easiest way to show you what's going on in terms of the instruments that are involved is that in this part of the score, right here, where my fingers are bracketing, is the woodwind family. So we know there are 4 families in the orchestra. We've got the woodwinds, we have the brass and the percussion and the strings. We try to fit everything into that, and basically they all do, although the harp is one that sometimes people are saying, well, it's strings, but it's back there with the percussion, and people decide different things as they will. But those are the 4 basic families. Woodwinds here, and then you can see here down to there. It says 1, 3, and it says horn in F here, trumpet in F, posaunen, which is trombones, I'm sorry, and bass tuba. And then here, well, you see what Mahler thought, the harp, or harf, as it says here, harfe. The pauken, becken, and harfen are here. That's part of the percussion. And then on the very bottom, if you can see down here, is the string family. You have the first violins, second violins, violas, the cellos, and the double basses. Here again, percussion family here, and the harp, brass and woodwinds on top. So all of these notes are happening simultaneous with each other. And it is the job of the conductor, of course, as you can see, it would be very difficult to take all of this in just by looking at it. So whenever you hear that Toscanini could look at a score and hear it right away, don't believe it. That would be like picking up the newspaper and saying you could read all the words at one time. It's physically impossible to do that. You can't actually do it. So it's not a possibility to look at something and hear it. You can look at individual lines and start to create kind of a structure in your mind, and then you build upon that from the things that you memorized looking at. That's how you would do it. So you can hear the score in your head. That part is correct, but you can't do it upon sight. That's why it takes many, 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 many hours of sitting with the score in one's lap or at the piano or at a table, whatever, and just really learning what's actually written there. Then after you figure out how everything fits together with this blueprint, as it were, and you form an idea of the sound, it creates kind of a template so that when you go into rehearsal and you hear what the orchestra has to offer back when they play together, you should be able to say, okay, this is what we have to deal with. These are the problems. These are the things that are happening well. And that has to be reflected in the conducting and in the rehearsal. And then you make a plan, essentially, as you're going along, how you're going to chisel this into good shape. Now, with professional orchestras, they already start playing it on a very, very high level. So they're already realizing a lot of the things that are happening in the music. But they certainly don't have control over their colleagues who can play more loudly than they can, or who may be a little bit off or can't hear someone else across the stage in order to play with them. And that's where a conductor can really come in with a vision, with a sense of unity to bring everybody together and get on the same page, as it were, and to really hopefully provide some inspiration for bringing a piece to life in the performance that you will get to hear. So just a couple of technical things, just to point out quickly. There are 4 flutes that share this top line. This is something that Mahler liked to do in his orchestration, sometimes for volume, but it was very much for color. Mahler was known during his lifetime much more as a conductor than he was as a composer. So he got to know the orchestra extremely well through that. We have the oboes. Then we get to the E-flat clarinet, which is a transpose instrument. So when you look at that and you see it's a D, it's actually not. It's actually an F because it plays a minor third above. And then the A clarinet is actually playing, they're always playing, sounding a minor third below what their actual note is. I won't go through everything here because would feel very pedantic. But the idea is that the conductor has to learn all of the notes, all of the rhythms, and all of the dynamics and all the texture, and try to figure that out, and try to be as true to the composer as possible. And in doing so, you would think that that would be a very objective kind of thing, because there are certain objective truths to this. I mean, an F is an F is an F, and it has to be in tune with each other. I mean, they have to all be in tune with each other. The rhythms are divided in a very mathematical way. And so if we can measure these things with a machine. That's how objective these truths are. That's only where we begin. Because after that, after we have those things, it's, well, how much is a forte or is a fortissimo, which means very, very loud, or very soft, in order to get certain thematic elements to come through. So that's where the real work begins. And every conductor who is interpreting a score will try to be, hopefully, if he or she is really good and has a lot of integrity, will try to really represent what's best on the page. And in doing that, they'll come up with 100 different truths. It's all very different, even though they're working with the same raw material. And of course, even the same conductor and same orchestra in the same hall, they're going to come up with something. It's going to happen differently on the next night than it did the night before. So this is a little bit of what I would show Bill's class. And I didn't talk about the conducting part at all. And I would always say, if you want to learn to actually conduct in the physical sense, I could all show you that, and I could show you too in 15 minutes. And you could all be conductors. And then it's the rest of your life from that point. I mean, I can show you to move your hands. That's actually I want to say the easiest part. It's a very necessary part to be good at, and it isn't easy for everybody. But it is really, in a sense, for a conductor to stand in front of very, very good musicians. It is really a point of departure because everything else has to come after that. So that's a little detour from talking about Bill, but I wanted to say integrally related because this is an example of what he would ask me to do, and it was to just shed more light. I remember it was actually at an Oasis over in Shoppingtown. We were talking about Sibelius' 7th Symphony, and he loved that piece so much, and he loved the big trombone solo in it. And then he brought me in to talk a little bit about it. And I would say, well, there's also this going on.
To conduct the First Symphony. And again, that was a wonderful performance. But he would have thought, wow, Daniel Hege, because he remembered you. And of course, you know him. He would have thought, what a great performance. And we were all talking about it afterwards. We were all incredibly moved. I mean, I couldn't even find words after the performance. Maybe because of my health at the moment, it seemed to penetrate right into my soul, and I just was deeply moved, not just by the words, but by the way Verdi wrote such incredible melodies and such variety of melody. And yet it's all Verdi, you know it's Verdi. The orchestration, gosh, it was really very, very good. But I just wanted to congratulate you, Daniel, on a great performance last night. And you seemed absolutely confident as you were conducting it. And it was so good to see you on the podium again. I mean, this is Bill. I'm lying in bed at the moment. I've been resting all day today, Saturday around about 5:45. I relax by watching the British soccer on Sky Fox. I find it very relaxing watching football or soccer. Such a beautiful game to watch. And just played by teams like Manchester United, and Arsenal and Chelsea. So I love watching the games. I find it very relaxing. And I've been reading papers, catching up with myself. But
That's as much as the message would hold. And so, the singer on the Four Last Songs CD that we were just listening to was Gundula Janowitz, an amazing singer. Yes.
This. So we used to go to Tri-Cities Opera with him, and he would actually cry sometimes during the opera. So it was really a moving experience. But then on the comical side, whenever he needed a haircut, he said, I have the Beethoven look.
We met Bill many years ago in 1990, and he taught at Le Moyne, and my husband Bernard taught at Le Moyne and still does teach at Le Moyne. He's at class, otherwise he would have been here. And I don't know if you can hear me.
You need to hold it right into
Okay. And Bill became a very dear friend of ours for almost 20 years. And he mentored my daughter when she had to learn the piano, and because of the Le Moyne connection, and also because of an English connection. My background was in England, and so when Bill would talk about the food and everything, we could connected, and he loved coming home for dinner because he liked Indian food, but he also liked having a nice English tea and cucumber sandwiches. And he could not understand why Americans could not make a proper cup of tea or a good cucumber sandwich. And then he visited us in Poland and stayed with us, and he used to go and see a ballet frequently, many times over. And he'd come from Berlin, and he had just seen Swan Lake. And Swan Lake was on again in Warsaw. So he said, we've got to go and see it. So my husband said to him, why, Bill, you didn't remember it properly the last time you were there last week. And of course, Bill would say, oh, Bernard, and he would do this, and have a smile. And he would join in with everything. And He was just a very dear friend.
We were taking one of the courses, many courses he taught on music at OASIS. And one day he came racing in, as he usually did, a little bit late. And he had on the wildest red, white, and blue tie you ever saw in your life. And he proudly said, "I just become an American citizen." And with that, he raced over and played Stars and Stripes Forever and was going like this.
Excuse me. I have, sorry, just.
My English is not good, but I hope you can understand. When Bill was in the hospital before he died, this is very funny because I think a Sunday when he became very ill, and I never realized because, I have no idea about morphine or everything. As what I know, I said, oh, why there is no more what they call that, the monitor? I told to the nurse, and then the nurse said, we don't need that. I said, why? I want to look, I want to see what is the blood pressure and pulse of my husband. And then the nurse said, we already have that in the nurse station. I said, oh, but I want it here. I want to see it. But they turn it off because they put already the, what they call this, the DNR, donut resource. Yeah, they put here. I said, what is this? Because I have no really idea. I don't understand. So, but Bill is already sleeping the time. So I didn't know about morphine at all. So I said, so Bill is sleeping. So when he awake on Monday around I think it's afternoon. So I'm very happy because he's awake, because he sleep since Sunday. I said, oh, Bill, you're awake. I said, oh, thanks God. And then Bill said, oh, Flor, what is the day today? So I said, oh, it's already Monday. Monday? And then, yeah. And then what is the date? I think it's 23. I said, 23, April 20. So, oh, I sleep very long time. I said, yes, Bill, that's why I'm very happy that you're awake. And then, oh, today is, I really don't know why he said this, but he said, today is the birthday of William Shakespeare. And then I said, he died. He died. He was young when he was died. And then after that, he sleep again. So it means that even in his sleeping, what is in his mind is what he teaching. So that is the one that I can share. Sorry for my English. I cannot.
Thank you.
I've known Bill since 1972, but in response to the lady when she was commenting about he was so excited about becoming an American, Bill invited me to his celebration of becoming an American at the State Federal Building. But referring back to Flor's comment about William Shakespeare, I performed with Bill at Salt City Playhouse, playing Mrs. Sowerberry, and he played Mr. Sowerberry, the funeral undertakers, in Oliver. And then he played my son the next year when I was Eleanor of Aquitaine in Lion in Winter. But what I really want to say is I was so happy to direct him in his last performance with the Syracuse Shakespeare Festival at the Escher Warehouse when he played William Shakespeare.
And he said, oh, I said, yeah, I've got to get on my rounds. He said, so rare do I get to talk to someone who has this much to offer. So it just sticks in my mind.
Yes, I had the good fortune to know the late Frank DiGiacomo, who was a composer here in central New York, lived in Casanova, and he and Bill West were very, very good friends. And we would have afternoon, evenings. I used to like to cook. I would do the cooking, and they would do the talking, with many other people there, many people. And one afternoon, I remember that he and Mr. DiGiacomo got into a discussion about Elgar's Dream of Carrontius, which Frank DiGiacomo didn't have much use for, and Bill thought was one of the greatest things ever written. So the badinage back and forth between these two minds was marvelous. It was scintillating and funny, and it was like it's hard to say. It was like listening to an improvisation of such brilliance and such knowledge and such depth of comprehension of material that is such a central thing in Western civilization and the world that we know. Just marvelous.
Thank you. Fred, excuse me, could you hand this down to Fred, please?
Judith Harris, you have me by 8 years. I met Bill in 1980, and we've in a seminar on Verdi taught by the late Abraham Vinus. And we've talked about Verdi, we've talked about music, we talked about America. He also spent the 4th of July with me when I was up in Maine, and we had lobster, and it was the first time he'd ever attacked a real lobster, a whole lobster. But we had all of these Mainers who showed him exactly how to do it, and he was thrilled because a 4th of July in Maine meant he was a true American. I said, Bill, do they have these fireworks anywhere? And then he told me all about Guy Hawkes Day. And so we compared as we were watching fireworks. The other side that's come throughout this evening, this time, is his deep spiritual life. We met in Verdi, doing Verdi, and then the next semester we would be doing medieval notation. And we would be doing our 14th century medieval notation up until about 2 o'clock, and then in Byrd Library. And then we would continue in the parking lot for another hour, in which he would regale me with tales about doing beach missions, in his very strong commitment as a Christian, as a deeply spiritual man, and this connected with his musicianship, his great humanity, and all of the love that he gave to each one of us. And each one of us I was very, very privileged to know him for over 30 years.
I want to talk a little bit about another side of Bill, the non-cultural side, the non-spiritual, we lived down the street from Bill, and he would stop by our house from time to time for dinner and socialize. And on one winter evening, we said goodbye to Bill, and he walked home. Then I went out to the front porch to bring my shoes back in, and I put my foot in them, and they were 2 sizes too small. So I called Bill, and I said, Bill, can we trade shoes? And he said, oh, I was wondering about that. The other little incident that, again, illustrated one of Bill's delightful qualities is that one afternoon, the phone rang, and Bill said, Mike, can you come down? And I said, sure, what's the problem? And he said, my television is smoking. What should I do? I said, hide the cigarettes. And I said, just unplug it and I'll come on down.
I knew Bill also for decades. I think the first year that the Civic Center was open, I was in the opera chorus, and I think it was the Verdi La Traviata. And lo and behold, I was so fortunate because I always got paired up with the shortest guys because I'm short. And they were very clueless when it came to acting. This time I got paired up with Bill. And it was a stage that had a set that had many stairs coming down for the lovely ballroom or the Violetta's home. And Bill offered me his arm to go down these stairs, and we all, the women all had these gowns on it. I'm going, wow, this is a first. This is the first time this ever happened. So he was truly a gentleman. We were in several productions together, and he always was a very great gentleman. We were good friends and had many meals both in my home and out. I loved him.
Well, I would like to speak to a experience that my wife and I had and a few friends, and it speaks to Bill's insatiable curiosity. It speaks to his humility, but very few people will know that this past week has been the Festival of Tabernacles in the Jewish spiritual calendar. And it's a very beautiful festival, meaningful. We leave our homes with solid roofs and all that protection, and we follow our forefathers who were carried through the desert in booths. So it's called the Festival of Tabernacles, the Festival of Booths. In the Hebrew, it's Sukkot. Well, to speak to Bill's insatiable curiosity, I don't know how it came about, but we said, Bill, why don't you come into our festival? We're going to have dinner. We'd love you to grace our humble abode, which now consisted of 8 by 16 4-foot panels. And we were all sitting around, and Bill, so part of the festivities, and he looked up and he saw the bamboo that opened to the stars and to the skies, and I felt truly moved and understood, as he was biblically very well-versed, what the Festival of Booths was in the Jewish calendar. And we thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed having him.
Hi. The last year of Bill's life, I often drove him to church on Sundays. And there was a few of us. We used to sit together in the back of St. Paul's Cathedral. And Bill loved the choir there. And I remember the last Easter Vigil. It was, I think, the last time I went to church with Bill. And I have to tell you, I loved driving Bill to church because he was such a good friend to everyone in his life. He would just question me the whole time about everything going on in my life. He wanted to know what I was doing. He was always a little bit worried about me. Very fatherly in that way. And I really appreciated his care and concern for me. It made a difference in my life, this person who expressed interest in me. So the last time we went to church was the Easter Vigil. And I drove him home, and he was quiet. He wasn't questioning me like he usually does. And he got out of the car, and he walked very slowly up to his porch. And he stood on his porch for a very, very long time. And he just watched me in my car. And I just stood and I looked back. And I realized that in a sense that was Bill's goodbye. And I've never forgotten that moment.
Does anybody else have any stories, memories, Bill? Anything? All very touching. Thank you for sharing. This time is, I think, a wonderful time for us to be together, to look back on our experiences with Bill, and to think of him, remember him now. And he'll never be forgotten. What a profound mark he made in all of our lives, all in its very unique way, and in many ways very common way. Common among us, the way we can all agree on so many things about Bill's personality, those parts, but it very unique for every individual and very special. Truly, he will be missed. So, thank you. Thank you.
Daniel, don't leave.
Thank you. This is all for Bill. We're just doing this together. I'm a kind of a catalyst here, but we're all thinking about Bill here. So, thank you all for coming. In closing remarks.
Closing remarks. We all thank you, Daniel, for taking the time. And I know you wanted to be here, and you did this as a gift, and it enabled us all to come and not to charge anything, and it was really for the love of Bill and your relationship with him. And I do have to say that on the night that he died, there were Mary Stanley, who couldn't be here, who extends her regrets, Julia, who was is a friend of Floor's, Julia, and Floor, and Joan Willard. That's not you, no. Where's Joan? There she is, who was holding, oh, you're Fred Willard, okay. Joan was holding Bill's hand. Nancy Hoople, who drove in from Springfield, Massachusetts, who couldn't be here today, and sends her regrets. Of course, Daniel Hege. Tony from England came. Is Tony here? He's from England? Bartlett? Wendy was here in the hospital room with us, Tracy and myself, and at the time, I think that is all. But Daniel and Floor, who you had the cassette tape there, playing the music that some of which Daniel shared today, I was mesmerized. I didn't know that Bill was going to die that night. I thought he was still alert. That's why I wanted to say goodbye to him. But we were there, I don't even know how long. It was a long time. And Daniel talked about the music and about the passing to the other side like he did today. And it was just so transforming and poignant. And I took out and made notes. These are my original notes because I had to remember what he was saying and what was really happening and what we all experienced together. So Tracy and I and Wendy, we wanted to replicate somehow, bring us all together with Daniel and have this kind of an afternoon. So Bill, we're with you, and you're in your chair. And Daniel, we're so grateful to you for this wonderful gift. And thank you all for sharing your stories. And thank you for coming, and keep in touch. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you for the people who remember my husband. Thank you for everybody that loves him. Thank you very much. He is very happy about this.
He knows about it. He's watching.